Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I seek unanimous consent that I have 5 legislative days and any other speaker who may arrive to revise and extend remarks and include extraneous material on the subject of my special order.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I come to the floor today just to take a few minutes to call attention to a problem that I've been trying to raise in this body and in my work before I came to Congress for some time, and specifically to describe the conditions in my own hometown of Flint, Michigan. The subject that I'm addressing is the unique and really difficult challenges facing America's older industrial cities, cities like my hometown of Flint, Michigan, a city that is the birthplace of General Motors. It's where the first UAW contract was created, was found, was signed. But it's a city that has really struggled as it has made this transition from the old to the new economy. It's a city that had 200,000 people just a couple of decades ago and now hovers right around 100,000 citizens, a poorer city than it once was, a city that's lost 90% of its manufacturing jobs. I raise this because I believe that this Congress and this government, the federal government, has an obligation to reinvest in these communities, communities that help and that can have a significant effect on our future. These are the cities where innovation took place and where it can take place again. But my own hometown right now is struggling with a problem, unfortunately, that is not entirely of its own making. My home of Flint, a city that was once really the center of the auto manufacturing universe, can't even guarantee to its citizens one of the most essential functions of government, can't guarantee to citizens that it can deliver clean, drinkable water to their households. We have elevated lead levels in the city of Flint in their water system. And it's been known for some time, for about a year, that there have been significant problems with water quality in Flint. And despite protests really at the state and federal level, public officials saying that there's no problem with the water, that it's completely safe to drink. In fact, one state official told City of Flint residents that it just needed to simply relax. It's been revealed recently through independent studies now confirmed by the state government that we have lead levels far in excess of what is allowed under the federal lead and copper rules. This is completely unacceptable. And in fact, what makes this even more troubling is that this is a tragic set of circumstances that has public health implications for the citizens of my community that was completely avoidable, that is the result of decisions that were made by the state of Michigan when it took over control of this fiscally stressed city. This is a city that is struggling in a lot of different ways. Twice in the last decade has been under the control of a receiver, of a state-appointed emergency manager that takes away the authority of local government officials to make decisions for themselves, takes away the authority of the Flint citizens to elect their own representatives to govern themselves, and places authority to control the city in the hands of a single master, an emergency manager. Well, it was during the period of time that one of those emergency managers was in control that the state decided for the city of Flint that for a temporary period of time, simply to save money, it would begin to draw water rather than from the city of Detroit water system, which had a water source from Lake Huron, but would begin to draw water from the Flint River, a small river that passes through our hometown, a river that is the name of our own community. The sad thing is, and this tells you a little bit about how some folks in different levels of government, the federal and state level, think about these older cities. There was no robust review, no testing, no examination as to whether or not this river water would result in clean water being delivered to homes, drinkable water delivered to citizens. And as a result, this water drawn from the Flint River is substantially more corrosive and has led to lead leaching from the pipes in the delivery system into the drinking water in Flint homes. And in fact, there was a study that was just done in the last day or two that shows in Flint school district buildings, water being delivered to Flint school children has lead levels far above the actionable level under the EPA lead and copper rule. Think about this. This is in the 21st century in the United States of America. We have a city, a great old city that was a part of the Industrial Revolution, can't even deliver clean and safe drinking water to its citizens. Not only because of our failure to invest in infrastructure in this country, which is a big part of the problem, but largely because officials at the state government simply decided, well, that Flint River water, that'll be good enough. No real scientific research to determine whether or not that water would be safe. It'll be fine. And even when evidence was presented indicating that that water might be unsafe, Flint citizens were told by the state government to just relax. Don't worry about it. Well, that's a complete failure of government. It's a failure of government, frankly, at the federal level, because for almost a year now, I have been asking the EPA to intervene, to first of all help this old city of Flint rebuild itself and rebuild its water system by providing some relief through the Clean Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund, some degree of loan forgiveness, which is allowable under federal law, but in this case, a technicality has prevented the EPA from allowing the state of Michigan to grant that kind of relief. That could make a huge difference for this city in its ability to rebuild its own infrastructure. But so far, all we get from the EPA is no, and we ask for technical assistance from the EPA. Now, recently we've had more attention, but frankly, it's not enough. I mean, where's the urgency? If the role of the U.S. EPA is to ensure adherence to this rule, this law that requires clean and safe drinking water to be available to its citizens, they ought to do more than sit back and offer opinion. They need to be engaged. And so I call on the EPA to take a much more focused role in making sure that the citizens of Flint have clean drinking water. Now, I mentioned that this was not an accident. This was done during a time, this decision to use this questionable water source was done when the city was under financial receivership, when an appointed emergency manager was making the decisions for the city of Flint. So here we had a situation where this emergency manager, this outside new management, is appointed to come in and deal with the issue of fiscal insolvency. And by only looking at the short-term balance sheet, made a decision to get cheaper water that turned out to be dangerous for the residents of the city. And actually, potentially, has handed the city a huge cost to fix what could be hundreds of millions of dollars of permanent damage to the water system as a result of that decision. So an emergency manager comes in with the idea that somehow outside management is the only problem that this city faces, makes decisions that not only ruins the reputation of the city, but also causes significant health risk, and then hands the city a bill, potentially, to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, and at the same time, over the last decade, has continued to cut direct support to that very city. I mean, this just doesn't make sense. The citizens of the city are responsible for the fact that its infrastructure has been allowed to deteriorate. They're not responsible for the fact that at the federal level and at the state level, we have not supported redevelopment in these places. And in fact, through transportation policy, housing policy, tax policy, land use policy at the federal and state level, we've actually, unfortunately, contributed to the hollowing out of these older cities And now the citizens of this place have to pay the price. The failure to reinvest in these older cities is not without victims. And right now, it's the people of the city of Flint that are the victims of a failure at the federal, frankly, and at the state level. And it's something that just cannot be tolerated. So when we think about this question, when we think about this particular case of the city, my hometown of Flint, the fact that these decisions have been made for them by people at the state capitol, they are paying the price. And almost inexplicably, even though today, in a complete reversal, an admission of failure by the state has come in and said now they are going to help facilitate the reconnection temporarily to the Detroit water system until a permanent Lake Huron line can be established. Inexplicably, they're actually asking the city government to empty out its remaining resources, financial resources, and put millions of dollars up to help contribute to pay for fixing a problem that the state government is actually responsible for making. The state broke the system, and now, yet again, it's the city residents who are being asked to contribute to pay for a problem that they did not create in the first place. Sadly, while this may seem like an extreme case, it's a pretty consistent tale. All across this country, but especially in the Northeast and Midwestern United States, but in the South and West as well, there are older cities that have, in the past, contributed greatly to economic growth in this country and have been allowed, in some ways, encouraged to wither, to be hollowed out. And we can't let this continue. So here, when we see before our very eyes 30, 40, 50 American cities, and as I said, including my own hometown, continue to fall farther and farther behind, have its infrastructure continue to deteriorate, what do we spend our time talking about here in the United States Congress? Petty fights between Democrats and Republicans, and frankly, more recently, petty fights between Republicans and other Republicans. We haven't even touched the idea of a big infrastructure bill that could help places, not just like my hometown of Flint, but other places across the Midwest and across the country that could be much more productive if we simply had 21st century infrastructure, a water system that can deliver clean water to its residents. There's no excuse. There's no excuse at the federal level for us not providing the kind of help that would make a place like Flint a far more productive place with decent roads, good schools, and a water system that delivers clean water. I mean, that seems pretty fundamental, and it is. But without that, these older communities, these older cities have no chance of connecting to the new economy, no chance of contributing the way they're capable of to the next economy of this country. And it's shameless that we haven't seen the urgency that I think is required in order to deal with this enormous problem. There are victims to this failure. There are victims, individuals who have been really left behind because of the failure at the federal and at the state level. So, Mr. Speaker, I know I've taken a few moments. I don't need to take the full half hour that has been allotted to me because we will continue this discussion. We will continue this conversation. I just want to make sure that the folks who are listening, people in this body, people across the country understand that unless we take time, unless we take the effort in this body to address the problems of these older cities, we will not have done our job. And it's important that the American people know that this Congress is willing to stand up for them and stand up for America's cities. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.